Hello, beautiful people. Thank you for tuning in. Now let's take a deep breath in and out. Exhale the doubt. Everything is okay. Now let's see what messages MindBodyBronx has in store for today. If y'all don't know, that's my new intro. As I have rebranded as MindBodyBronx instead of Tarot by Bronx. I'm still known as Tarot by Bronx, of course, but I'm not just strictly tarot anymore. I've gone beyond that to healing and health and all these other things, and spiritual well-being and just physical connection to ourselves. So today I really wanted to talk about something that I just I was just thinking about this today, or something prompted me to have this discussion about why loneliness, or being alone rather, feels so bad sometimes, or why a lot of people struggle with being alone. On a surface level, like, yeah, nobody likes to feel alone, but some people also use it as a defense mechanism, and they just feel like they have to be alone. So I wanted to just give you guys some extra perspective on how I feel about what loneliness really is, or being alone, or how to embrace being by yourself or being alone. From a young age, to be honest, I've always been someone who's had a fear of being alone. I'm an only child by blood, but I've always had a fear of being by myself and being alone. Um, and I feel like the first real reason you may have this fear of being by yourself, or why being alone feels bad, or like when you are alone or you find yourself alone, you start to get anxious or uncomfortable or upset. One of the main reasons is because of the storylines you're creating surrounding why you are alone, right? So whenever we aren't in a relationship, or we're not hanging out with friends, or we're doing things by ourselves, it's easy for us to like start to come up with narratives or come up with storylines like, oh, I'm alone because people don't like me, or people don't want to hang out with me, or I don't have any friends, or people don't, whatever, like I don't resonate with people. Like, even if this is something that you're not consciously thinking about, there's always a story. Sorry, there's like a hair on my microphone. There's always a story playing in the back of our minds that we have to be aware of. It's our subconscious. We have to be very careful of those storylines that are playing. So if, you're playing these storylines about like when you're doing things by yourself, or you're like, oh, people are going to think that I'm, I don't know. It could be anything. It could be the craziest stories. Like, we're always thinking about other people's perceptions of us. So it could be something like, when we go out by ourselves, we're like, oh, I don't want anybody to think I'm a loser, or I don't have friends, or, and this is the story that plays in your head when it's like you go out, your social anxiety. If you have social anxiety, you may always be thinking about how other people are perceiving you, and what they're thinking about you, and what they're judging you. And so if you judge yourself really harshly, then you're going to think that other people are also doing the same thing to you. So be careful about the narratives that you create for yourself when you are alone. And, when you're not in a relationship, or you're not with friends, or you don't have friends in a season, creating that narrative like, oh my gosh, I need to get some friends, because if not, then I'm this. Or if not, then people are going to think this of me. If I'm not married, if I'm not in a relationship, people are going to start to assume, or I'm going to start to feel like, fill in the blanks with your own narratives. That's a big thing. So changing that narrative to, I'm alone right now because I'm healing, or I'm just trying to get to know myself better. I'm enjoying my own company. I'm healing my relationship with codependency, and reminding yourself that it doesn't have to be those other narratives that you are creating. But if they're subconscious beliefs, you have to catch them, and you have to realize that's what's playing out and change them. So another reason why feeling or being alone might feel bad to you, or not feel good to you, is because you're doing it from a place of ego, right? Doing it from a place of trying to prove something to yourself, or trying to prove something to other people. Like if you're just being by yourself to say, yeah, I can be alone, trying to prove you can be alone happily, comfortably, like forcing yourself to be by yourself, or forcing yourself to isolate, or, avoidance. It's typically when we go through these seasons of being alone, or these cycles, it's like it's all or nothing. Like we're just completely alone, nobody. Like, we're not connecting, or only surface level, or we're completely engrossed in a relationship, or we are enmeshed or codependent with somebody else. So be careful of the ego, and your perception of self, right? Because the same reasons that can drive us to want to connect with other people to prove something, our egos, to make ourselves feel validated, like, oh, I want to feel like I'm worthy of love. I want to prove to myself or to somebody else that I'm worthy of being chosen, or being accepted. So I need that validation from another person. We can do the same things like with ourselves. We can come from a place of ego, like, I'm going to just be by myself because I don't want anybody to think that I can't be single, or I don't want to believe that I need another person. So then it leans into this hyper independence, and we're just like completely closed off, or we're just like, I know I could be single, or I can prove to myself or prove to somebody else that I don't need anybody. And we don't want to come from that place either, because when we come from that wounded ego place, it is going to be a very unsatisfying experience for doing things alone, being by ourselves. You don't want to just do it just to be like, I did it. And then there's like an empty victory following that. And then another perspective from that can even be, it's even along that same line, is it's a place of self-sabotage, right? So a lot of the times when we choose to be alone, it happens during a season or in a period of our lives when we are super angry, or we're very hurt, or it's come from a place of lack or fear, of scarcity, of anger, or I already said that, I think, aggression, really high or low emotions, where it's just, there's no neutrality. It's just, like, I'm gonna be alone forever. I don't want nobody around me. Everybody get away from me, you know? And so when it comes from that place, it's a defense mechanism. It's a place of trying to protect ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, that can actually be self-sabotage, where in those moments, you may need more safety. You may need trust with other people. You don't need to just completely isolate yourself from everybody all the time. Maybe from specific people, or you need more boundaries with those people. But when you just completely close yourself off from everybody because of an experience you had, or because something feels triggering or feels familiar, then ultimately you're closing yourself off from also healing through other people. So be careful of doing it super rigidly, like completely black and white, like I'm just going to completely close everybody off, or I'm going to be completely open. It doesn't need to be so rigid when you are choosing to be alone. Being alone should come from a place of calm, stillness, being like, a place of acceptance. Like, this is a period where I'm just choosing. It's like I'm not being forced. It's not coming from a place of fear or lack or abandonment or mistrust. It's just coming from a place of, yeah, I just want to be by myself, or spend more time with me in this season of my life. And articulating that, or respecting that, or honoring that. And also, looking at being alone, it, like I said, going back to, it doesn't have to be so rigid. People think like when you're healing, or you're going through a period where you want to be more alone, that you just don't talk to anybody ever. I don't feel like that's ever super necessary for long periods of time, in my opinion. I feel like we all need someone to talk to eventually. If you can just find one person to communicate with, or you can at least be open to energies coming in or talking to somebody, it can help the experience, where you're like, yeah, I know I'm still honoring being by myself or doing most things alone, but I'm also not closing myself off either. I know I can have boundaries surrounding how much availability or emotional depth I want to have, but don't deprive yourself. Don't punish yourself. And you'll find that when you take the rigidness out of being alone, and you allow yourself to have experiences with other people or connections, and then come back, ebb and flow, like be in the mix, then be alone, but not so like it has to be like this and this and this and this. When you let it flow, and you come from a place of calmness and be like, I'm okay with whatever, and you change those narratives, you'll feel better about whatever chapter you're in, whether that's in community or by yourself. It doesn't have to mean anything personal about you.